This message is brought to you by Choosing Freedom, a solutions-focused, action-orientated community group based in Perth, Western Australia. The following is a narration of an interview conducted with the Primary Water Institute founder, Pal Pauer, available at www.primarywaterinstitute.org. Reading from the paper, quote, "The following dialogue explains in detail the primary and secondary water cycles chart, the copyright illustration shown at the Water Cycles tab page. Today we are going to explain in detail the illustration you see before you, which shows the primary and secondary water cycles. You'll see that the mantle of the Earth contains H2O. That primary water is created deep within the Earth from the synthesis of hydrogen and oxygen under tremendous pressure from the Earth's internal heat. H2O, in the form of vapor, is forced up through the weakest areas of the Earth's crust, the rock fissures, and it becomes liquid as it cools. Primary water is forced upward. Atmospheric secondary water, driven by solar energy, flows downward. Let us examine the illustration starting from the left. Our consultant today is Pal Pauer, founder of the Primary Water Institute. Paul, the first black line says natural PW spring. PW stands for primary water. The water is coming up from deep within the Earth, so it is primary water, correct?
Yes, actually these springs are quite common throughout the world. On the left drawing they're on flat ground, but sometimes a primary water spring manifests on top of a mountain commingling with runoff water, drawing on right. Sometimes in a valley, sometimes in the middle of a desert like the Sahara. These desert waters do not come from the sky. We should be asking what an oasis is all about. The water is being forced up from deep below.
Tell us about the black line pointing to a yellow illustration.
This is a drilling rig that has been placed by someone trained to locate primary water in the fracture, the faulted structure. The caption reads PW, which stands for primary water, well at a depth of 200 to 800 feet. But the fact is one could locate primary water at 0 feet or 1,000 feet. The depth is really unknown.
Going to the right are a couple of rain clouds producing water from the hydrologic cycle. Please tell us about the next 4 black lines.
The first line identifies permeable surface, pointing to permeable ground, which is comprised of unsorted material which could be crushed gravel, sands, or soil which has been oxidized on surface from which we grow our food. Permeable is simply any kind of oxidized surface into which water from the secondary cycle, water or snowmelt, can and does penetrate. It's part of the secondary cycle. Water can evaporate from or permeate into it. In short, it's not concrete or solid rock.
Why is the underground stream coming from the rain runoff from the mountain labelled polluted aquifer?
Polluted does not imply malicious or unconscious intent. Any aquifer that is trapped beneath this permeable material which we occupy has to be polluted because of our presence and the presence of animals. We occupy that space, so anything we throw away, flush, dispose of will find its way down to this aquifer. Today, pollutants also come from man-made contaminants into the atmosphere, which also includes radioactivity from nuclear problems.
Tell us about the reservoir in the illustration.
A reservoir is part of the secondary water cycle, even if constructed at a height higher than the structures with human occupancy, because a reservoir receives its water from rain or runoff.
There is a huge push for chemicals to treat our drinking water from the reservoirs. Water obtained directly from the primary water would not need to be treated to be safe to drink. Is this correct?
Absolutely.
And the 4th line called runoff?
Runoff flows from the highest point to the lowest point in our environment, and that water joins with the other waters of the secondary water cycle.
Let's look at the larger oval, entitled Primary Water Cycle. Please tell us about that.
We didn't know exactly what to name the full process, so we called it primary water cycle. First of all, it refers to water that originates in the mantle, the water cycle which predates even the existence of an atmosphere. The oceans were made, and the secondary water cycle came about thereafter from evaporation. We have evidence that the level of the ocean is not the same as it was 5 to 10,000 years ago. The water in the mantle contributes to our water planet being the water planet that it is. The total value of our ocean waters is in fact growing today.
Let's look back up to the secondary water cycle. There is a small lake to the right of a rain cloud on the left. Underneath it, we see an aquifer composed of both runoff and primary water. So some aquifers have both kinds of water?
Primary water comes up from the mantle and injects itself. The Earth has faults and fractures, so surface and primary water commingle in aquifers, in some lakes and some places in the ocean. This is shown on the illustration in the area directly below the sun.
So we have a situation of secondary water from the polluted cycle, commingling with primary water, an ongoing dilution of the pollution via this commingling. In places primary water is consistently surfacing.
Correct, except where the primary water fissures don't surface. Let's take a look at those.
In this illustration, we see each of the two mountains underneath a large rain cloud that there are primary water fissures which do not reach the surface.
That is absolutely correct. You can see two drilling rigs showing that you can access those waters that are trying to surface. The dark line shows the drill going into the primary water fissure. Today there are drilling rigs which allow us to access a fissure that can access these waters that are trying to surface by drilling either vertically or horizontally. The yellow drilling rig on the left shows a drill, which is indicated by the black line, entering horizontally, and the yellow rig on the right has a drill, again indicated by the black line, drilling vertically into a separate fissure. How one chooses to drill, of course, depends on the setting and the logistics. Can you drill horizontally? Is there a place to put the rig? In the old days, we didn't have rigs that would drill horizontally. We had to tool into the mountain, but now there exist such rigs.
We are seeing fissures that have never surfaced. Is it better to allow it to exist to reduce the force of pressure?
It makes no difference. This planet provides for us to use. It makes no difference to the planet whether we use it or we don't use it.
Moving to the right, to the volcanic eruptions, can you tell us about that?
There are simply no volcanic eruptions known anywhere without water vapors, which is further proof of the fact that when the unsorted magma surfaces in the form of eruptions of volcanoes, they bring along with them a yet undistilled, unseparated water in the form of steam. The magma from below brings along a great deal of water in the form of steam. When it doesn't erupt, it can exit simply as hot springs, which also exist all over the world.
Tell us about the fault lines filled with primary water in the ground to the far right of the illustration. What should the viewer understand about these?
Fault lines also indicate shear zones are a result of indirect activity down below. There can be vertical or horizontal faults, all of which are a result of the indirect activity from down below. The solid material down below is sort of bouncing around. The direction of the fault depends on which way the push comes, upwards, downwards, sideways. Earth movement can uncover a primary water fissure, which is exactly what happened recently in Napa Valley after the 6.0 earthquake, or it can disrupt and cut off a prior flow. People have asked whether drilling for primary water in such fault lines, and thereby releasing the pressure, would reduce earthquakes. The answer is that such drilling wouldn't stop Earth movements, because everything down below is under stress. It might mitigate Earth movement, so we could have a 2 instead of a 7 rated earthquake.
Do we have enough potable water for our world?
In fact, we have more water today than we've ever had in the history of the planet. The point is that we don't always have the water in the places we would like to have it if we rely only on the secondary water cycle, which is totally reliant on that which evaporates. The planet itself has enough potable water within it, which could see us through these weather cycles, which we have for many unknown reasons. We have a backup system, which is this planet.
It seems as if we have been relying on wrong information about water scarcity, about where water comes from. In a way analogous to think of our knowledge as in a period similar to that of flat earth science.
I concur 100%.
Recently in California, there have been emergency moratoriums on well drilling. For example, in October 2014, the county of Ventura, California, put a moratorium on all drilling, which was reducing the groundwater table and resulting in ocean intrusion. Farmlands abutting the ocean are finding increased salinity, such that the land can no longer be farmed because of the high salt content.
Ventura County should know better. The ancient river basin of Santa Clara Valley River flows into the ocean of Oxnard and Point Mugu. It is made up of both secondary and primary water sources. They refer to the water as our bank account, but they don't know where their money comes from. It's a distribution choice. In the past, they've pumped too much water from that basin and could not maintain the ability of the basin to sustain itself and keep the salt water out. They could choose to accomplish replenishing the water from the California aqueduct, which is to rob Peter to pay Paul. Or they could choose to have water wells in structures that Ventura County is well noted for and drill for primary water in, say, the foothills of Upper Ojai. It's a question of distribution and of cost. Such wells are independent of the atmosphere and would be there even in the drought periods.
Paul, your primary and secondary water cycles chart is easy to understand. We have simply not been taught. Thank you for your contribution to our understanding. End quote. Thank you for watching. If what we have discussed here resonates with you, you are welcome to join Choosing Freedom, a Perth-based action-orientated community group focused on implementing non-conventional paths of action with less than desirable returns seen on a political level. Choosing Freedom hopes to grow and support community energy that can be used to achieve tangible results through less known paths. Please realize that you are not powerless and there is hope for change. It just requires us to expand our thinking and actions. Help us bring primary water to Australia by contacting us at choosingfreedomcommunity@protonmail.com. For more information on primary water, visit primarywaterinstitute.org and the Global Resource Alliance website, detailing over 100 primary water projects in Tanzania, West Africa, as part of their water resource development project called Maji Mengi, or Abundant Water. You can also read about Stephen Rees's achievements whilst pioneering primary water throughout the 20th century in an online PDF copy of Michael Salzman's New Water for a Thirsty World, found at stopthecrime.net.